Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we are going to look at Spring Boot, REST, and the patch HTTP methods. You probably know that I have this series where I've gone through actually each of the HTTP methods when coding REST endpoints with Spring Boot, and now the time has come to patch. When should we use patch? If you're in any doubt, we can ask Wikipedia right here. We can actually see that, of course, the get is for get a representation of the target resource state. Post, which we tried last time, is doing something that has a side effect. There can be something with a side effect. Let's say that we create an object, and then two other objects also need to be created. Then we would definitely use posts. Post can also be used to create objects in general, while it actually says here you can also use put for that. So put can also be used to create to be used for creating an object. But usually you would use put to update fields, to update the object instead. So that you would use put when the object already is there, and if there's no side effects. If there are any side effects, you should use posts as your method. So put to update and patch to partially update the resource state. That is what we are going to try today. There's also delete the target's resource state. So now we are going to partially update the message that we created last time. We actually converted it into poetry, and we also added an author. That's what we did last time. The options HTTP method is used to advertise the available methods. That means that if someone calls with options to your endpoint, then they would actually they might expect that you would actually give them a kind of a list for what can we call on this on this resource right here. What can we do with the resource? It's a bit like hypermedia, where you actually get you get the treasure map for all of the rest for the next REST endpoints with the inside the response. And it's kind of the same with options. It's kind of the help menu you would actually get, where you will get the help for how to use the REST API that you have created. But now let us try to create a patch mapping and see if it works at all and how it actually works. I have this project right here, and of course it's available on my GitHub repository as usual for download. And I'm sorry I forgot to add the files actually last time. So there was someone who wrote your repository is empty. It is not. I just forgot to push the code and to commit it actually. So here we have this. We have a message entity right here, and this is the message entity that we created that is being stored in a H2 memory database when we start up. Then we can create then we can create these entities right here. So we have a save time that is for when was the last save, when was that executed, and then we have an author that's like Mike, and then we have the string message right here. And then we have a running ID, which is just generated automatically for us. Then we have a string representation right here, and I actually said that we want to create this manually instead of using Lombok, because it's an entity, and I've actually changed my mind right now. It is okay that we actually use a toString right here, because we can just when we have relations to other entities, if we get some relations to other entities, then we could actually just leave them out with a. Let us say we don't want the save time, then we'll actually use toString, and then we will actually use excludes like this. I'll create a new series of videos where I will tell you about the problems, the issues with using Lombok and also JPA together. You should use them together. There are just some issues that you need to think about also when you are dealing with REST responses, like because Jackson actually tries to convert this into JSON, and if you have reference to another object, then you can actually get into infinite loops and stuff like that. But that's for another time. Right now we will focus on the patch. So the situation is that someone actually has created a message, and now they want to update the author only. So that is the situation that we just invented right now, and that means that we would actually like to create a patch mapping, and that is just done like this. And then we will say update author, or change author, or something like that. Change author. And Usually when we are using patch, we will still have a request body. That means you will still post some data that should be processed, and then you will use that data to update the object. And again, here we will create a new REST response. I like to create a new REST response for each of my endpoints right here. So I'll say REST response, and then we'll say patch or update author like this. So now I have a nice response for. Now I have a nice response for my method right here. Let me say change author like this, and we need the request body again. Request body. This means that when the client sends a request, then we can actually convert that request body into a Java object from a class. And again, right here, I'll actually copy this part right here because I want to use this one, REST request. And now you might say, when you're naming your classes, shouldn't you have the most important part in to begin with, and then you would have like REST request and REST response in the end of the name? You're totally right. I regret actually prefixing all of these REST classes here with the REST requests. This would actually have been postfixed with that instead, because you want to have the most important part first, and then you want to have the least important part in the end. So then we have the update author right here. So REST request update author, and then we'll just use the same name as the variable as the parameter. So what's the argument? Sorry, parameter. Yes. The difference between the parameter and the argument is that the parameter is the definition in your method, and the argument is what you actually send to the method. It's just a little bonus information. So if you didn't know the differences, there's a difference between argument and parameter. Now let us create these classes right here. Create class, yes. Create. Give me my class. Give me my class. IntelliJ. Create the class, yes. Add builder. Oh, add builder. Number, yes. Add the what do we want to add? I want to add the no-args constructor. I want to add the all-args constructor. I need the no-args constructor so it can be serialized. I need the all-args constructor, or else the builder will not work. So the builder actually needs this all-args constructor right here. That's I think that's it actually. Builder, blah, blah, blah. I can also have data, so that means that then I will get the toString method and all the getters and setters. Yes, that's exactly what I want. So the request right here, I expect some new changed author or something like that, updated author. That is what I expect, and that's the only thing actually. Oh, that's the response we actually sent here. The response should actually. Usually we would actually have a representation of the entity almost, right? So I will actually copy these fields right here, and then we will create a response. And you might actually say, but you have a response that looks almost like this. Yes, but I want one response for each endpoint, so then I can easily change it. So then I have so actually this is just a representation of my entity. And now you might ask, why don't you just return the entity? I don't like returning the entities because then you would have to also think about the JSON construction of the entity. That means that you would like to you probably need to add some JSON ignore on some of your on some of the fields, and you might also maybe in some situations you actually would not need the ID. Maybe you wouldn't need the ID or something like that, or maybe you didn't need the message. Let's say in this situation we don't care about the message, we don't care about the save time or something like that. Then we can just change it. You're much more likely to actually to create a specific REST response that actually matches the situation when you are creating its own class. It does not take long. Of course, when you refactor stuff, then of course it can it can take a bit. Of course, if you don't like mapping, if you think mapping is boring, then you can watch my map struct videos. Here we are mapping objects around. So that is the REST response. Yes, I'm happy with that actually. So, and then the requests should also be created. Let's create the request. Inside the request, and again, I'll add builder, I'll add no-args constructor, I'll add all-args constructor, I'll add data, and I'll add one field right here. And that was the private string updated author. So that is what I will get for my client. I'll get this information right here. And what do I do with all this information? Of course, I like to have my REST controllers short and so they're easy to have get an overview of and to see right here. That means that I actually hide away all the ugly stuff in my message service right here. And of course, you can have multiple message services right here. You could create a change author message service, or message service change author, or something like that. That would be totally okay. But you can hide away your ugly logic into services. So I have a service right here, then I will say change author. And we can just return whatever message service like this. And we say author. And then we give the request as an argument right there. And then we will get a message that this return like this, and then we get an error because the method does not exist yet. I press Alt Enter, create method. Thank you very much, Engin. So here we get the author. So what should we do now? First, we need to update. First, we need to find the object actually from the database. So that means that we actually also need an ID. So let us also get ID, private long ID, and we could actually have gotten the ID from a path variable instead. That would also be fine, but now that we are receiving data, so let us just receive an ID also right here. So I'll say change author. So first we will actually, I have the repository wired in up here. We did that last time, so I have the message repository right there. That means that I can go to my method and I can say message repository, then I can say find by ID, and then we can say get the ID. So this means now we are actually fetching the entity from the database, and we have it like that. And I don't want optional. I want real object, and then we can have or else throw. So it means that now we'll just throw an exception if it's not there. Then we will say then we'll just throw some kind of exception, new illegal argument exception. Message does not exist with ID plus ID, and then we say REST author and then get the ID. Yeah. So now we complain with the or else throw. If you have an optional, if you don't know much about our optionals, then you can actually say that you want the value, or if the value is not there, if it's null, then if it's empty, sorry, then you can actually throw an exception. That is exactly what I'm doing right here. So that means that now I can get my entity. So now I have my message entity right there. If the entity was not there, then I'll get there. Then an exception is thrown. So okay, so now I have the entity. So, and here we want the entity, then we say author right there. And I can actually set my author without the setter, and that's because I played around with this Lombok annotation right here with accesses chain true and fluent true. Fluent true means that there will be no getter, and there will be no get, and there will be no set in front of the getters and in front of the setters, just so you know. That is why I can actually set the author by just writing .author, and then I can get the author from the rest, from the updated author right there. And then when we're done with that, then we need to save that entity again, save the entity. And then we have the save version, and then we want to return REST response updated author right there. And here we use the builder pattern. So I use the builder pattern. That means that I can just set the ID, save.getID. And then we can say, when we're done, we need to build. I just want to get rid of some of those errors right there. And then we can say update all for this. Why do we have that right there? That should be there. It is for the response we should build right here. Yeah. Response, yes. Sorry about that. And then we will say author, and that comes from the saved instance. Saved author, and then we say message, and then we say save.message. So it means that right now we're just mapping out all of the fields. Save time. The save time should actually also be updated now that we are entity. Then we can say that save time And then we say local datetime now, like this. So it means that now we also set the save time right here, so we can see when was it updated. Okay, so then we have it right there, save time. We want to get it from the save entity save dot get save time there. That is, so now we return that. Okay, everything looks fine. And everything looks fine. Of course, we could just create a create a unit test if we want to, and then we can just see that change author actually works. It is already, yes, update existing class. I already have this right here. So then I will say message controller, and then I will say change author, and then I'll create my REST request update author like this, using the builder pattern once again. I really like the builder pattern. If you haven't used it, then definitely start using it. It's much easier to use. Updated author, that could be Ole Bole. And then we could have the ID. We need an ID, so we actually need to create some data first. So that means we will actually say message controller dot new message. So create a message for us first. Then we'll say REST request new message, like this, builder. And let us just set this message to something. And we also want to have an author already, so the author could be Mike to begin with, and then we change it to Ole Bole. That means that this new message right here, then we can actually use the ID from that get ID, and then we can update our author. Then we get response, and of course we should always assert something in our tests, so assertions. Dot assert equals, and then we expect that the updated author should be Ole Bole. So let us just create this as a constant. I'll just copy it out here. So I'll say final string new author equal to Ole Bole, and of course this should be uppercase when it's constant. New author, and the best practice for using constant is actually to use snake case and then in uppercase like this. So we set the updated author there. Then we expect that the new author is equal to what was saved into the database, get author right there. So now we have quite a good unit test, and I would actually think that if this is green, then I would actually believe that everything's fine and it actually works. But here we're not using the patch part, so yeah, it's actually green, so we're actually happy. Our test shows that everything's fine, and this part works right here. So far so good. I would actually like to start my application, and then I would like to use the HTTP client, which is built into IntelliJ, and then I want to patch it. And I can actually, I have some HTTP files right here. If you don't have these files already, then you just go to tools, and then you go to HTTP client, and then you can get some examples. There are built-in examples that you can fetch right there. I already have one example, so I don't need to think about the format. So I'll just say patch message, add, and then here in the top of the patch message HTTP, let us just close all the files, close all the tabs. Here we will say, this is patch, and what did we choose as an endpoint right here? Change author. This means message change author. That is the endpoint. Message change author. Yes, the content type is application JSON. That's fine. And here we get the author. Of course, we could set this to what should we set this to? This. We need an ID, so we need an ID right here, and ID is 1, but we haven't created this message yet. So first we have to create a new message right here. Oranges are good. Then we can also have an author, which could be Mike to begin with. We are replacing that one. Okay, so here we have the. So here we are. Now we are posting. So first we are posting this message to our to own application. Let's see if it goes okay. And what is the response? Yes, here we have an ID and we have all of this data. So ID1 was okay. That is what has been. So we have an object that's been generated in the memory database right now. I'm using H2 in memory the database. That means if I patch it like this right now, then we still get the same message. The author is null. This means that it's the field right here. It should be updated author, right? So updated author. What was we need to see the REST requests, so I'll just see REST requests, update author, updated author. That was the name of the field, so we need to set that right down, and then we'll patch it again. Patch. Yeah, so now we actually have, so now it has been correctly changed, and yeah, this is the value from the memory database right now. ID1, message oranges are good, and now the new author is Liz instead of whatever it was before, it was Mike. You can also set it to Susan now, Susan, and then we patch it again, and then we get the same. Yeah, and then we get Susan right here. That's quite cool. So our application actually works. We have tried patch. That was the patch HTTP methods. And if you're in any doubt on which method that you should use, no harm is done. Actually, if you use the wrong one, sometimes you could actually both argue that post, put, and patch, all of those could actually be used sometimes. And the important part right here is that when you use these methods, then you're communicating to the user of your API. So if it's logical for your user to use a patch in the situation, then you should of course expose your endpoint as patch. If it's just maybe 2 out of 10 fields that you want the user of your endpoint to be able to update, then of course use patch. Oh, let's just go back. And the same with post. If whatever you're doing, maybe you have some kind of workflow where you push something to the next step, then that usually has some side effects. You might actually create something that, you might actually create something that needs to be approved by someone. It might also create some log entities. It could do a lot of things could happen, right? And maybe a new subcase is created, a ticket is created. A lot of things could actually be happening right here. Maybe a notification to someone could also be created when you do that. Then you definitely use post. If it's something with, side effects, secondary actions, then you would actually have use post. Put is for when you just want to update the entity from, or when you just want to update all of it. You can also use it to create. Actually, you can also use it to create the object. Sometimes you would use post to create, and then you would use put to update it instead, just to distinguish between those. But of course, again, it's up to you. The post and puts, they are very alike. But if you know there are side effects, then there's no doubt. Then it's definitely a post. The get HTTP method, usually you will not be able to add. A lot of clients will not allow you to actually add a request body. It will not allow you to put on some data in HTTP body when you are using get. So get should be used when you want to get something, and you do not need to actually put something into an object and actually send it to the backend. With get, you would usually use something called path variables, path parameters, and path variables, and you would also use something called request parameters, request arguments. That is, if you have, let us say that we have some local host right here. So I have this is my application right here. Then I would have the path. This is what we write here. Then we can actually say that this part right here was, this could be some part of the query. I could also use the question mark. This is called the query parameters, or the request arguments, if you will. So this is the query parameters. Then I can say that I want to filter on name or something like that, and then a new one with semicolon. Then I could say search for spaceship captains or something like that, right? So that is how you usually format your get requests. So you do not post data; you just use the URL itself, including the request parameter or the query parameters. That's actually it. That is just what I want to show you. Just I will remember to commit and push the code this time, I think. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening and hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.